Hey, what's going on everybody? Commander Crane here, and we are back with another Pioneer deck tech, but this one is very special. We're going to be talking about my post-ban Gruul Dinosaurs list that I'm currently playing. So for those who are new to the channel here, I frequently like to do updates on the current list that I'm playing for dinosaurs, just because the metagame is always changing a lot, and we just had some huge bans. Both Soren and Amalia were recently banned out of the format, so dinosaurs looks a lot different than it did before. There's a couple of cards that I used to play that I took out that are back in, and vice versa, as well as one spicy new card from Duskmourn that I'm really excited to play in this deck, and spoiler alert, it itself is not a dinosaur. So let's go ahead and hop into it here. So right at the beginning, I'll just go ahead and show off the list. This is the whole list that I'm playing, at least for the main board. If you want to see it, the deck list is also in the description below if you'd like to check it out. So a couple of things though, we're going to be talking about all the cards pretty much that are non-lands, except for the Land Elves and the Elvish Mystic. My brief explanation on this, because I feel like I mentioned this in every video, is I prefer playing the 8 Elves over cards like Odapec Huntmaster. Overall, Land Elves and Elvish Mystic are faster. It lets us have something to do on turn 1. It also allows us for some really fast like turn 4 kills, so that's why I'm playing Land Elves and Elvish Mystic. Odapec Huntmaster is good, but it is 2 mana, it is not 1 mana. I just wanted to go ahead and mention that. And then the land base is a pretty standard mana base for the most part. There's really nothing too crazy about it. You know, I'm not going to talk about specifically the lands because the land base really hasn't changed since Cavern Souls, which Cavern Souls is very, very good in this deck when you're playing against blue-white control deck. So let's go and hop into here. The first thing I want to talk about is the core of the deck, the dinosaurs. These are the dinosaurs that have pretty much never actually changed since I've been playing this deck. So, Marauding Raptor, Pugnacious Hammerskull, and Rampaging Raptor. We're playing 4 copies of each of them. They're absolutely fantastic. Like I've said in past videos, Marauding Raptor, I think, is the best card in the deck. It makes all of our dinosaurs cost 1 less. Marauding Raptor gets really, really big. It's absolutely fantastic. It's also really good with the thumbnail card in this video. So, Marauding Raptor, best card in the deck. Pugnacious Hammerskull is also fantastic. It's a 6/6 for 3, and, you know, attacks while you don't control another dinosaur, put a stun counter on it. Sure, most of the time we're going to control a dinosaur. I would say not even most of the time, pretty much all the time. So it's really just the 3-mana 6/6 that helps us power out another dinosaur that we're playing in this deck. Rampaging Raptor is really, really good. It's a questing beast for dinosaurs, trample haste 4/4. It's fantastic. I love Rampaging Raptor in this deck. It's just so fast. When we play turn 2 Marauding Raptor into turn 3 Rampaging Raptor and we're attacking for 8, maybe even 9 if we're attacking with a mana dork, it's so, so good. Definitely huge fan of Rampaging Raptor. There's a reason we're playing all 4 copies of that. And then the next slide here, rounding out our main dinosaurs that we're playing, we also play 4 copies of Regisaur Alpha and 2 copies of Ghalta Primal Hunger. So Regisaur Alpha is absolutely fantastic with Marauding Raptor. It's also why we're not playing Palani Snatcher for those who are interested, just because Marauding Raptor does kill the dinosaur eggs when they come into play. And, you know, personally, I like the 3/3 trampling dinosaur. It's definitely very, very relevant, but I love Regisaur Alpha. It's one of the best cards in the entire deck, and it's really good when we play for 4 mana with Marauding Raptor. Ghalta is pretty self-explanatory, best friends with Regisaur Alpha because it does get haste from Regisaur Alpha. I just really love Ghalta. We're going to be playing it for 2 mana pretty much all the time in this deck. You know, there is certain pathways where we can play this on turn 3. For instance, if we go turn 1 Elf, turn 2 Marauding Raptor, and then we play like Hammerskull for 2 mana, trigger the Marauding Raptor, that's 11 power, and then we can play Ghalta, which is just crazy to me. But there's some really cool pathways we can do to get Ghalta on turn 3, which is really cool. But also turn 4 with haste is absolutely fantastic as well. So the next slide here that I want to talk about, these are the, you know, obviously we have a dinosaur here, but I wanted to talk about the new cards that are being featured in this deck. So Ripjaw Raptor is not a new card by itself, but it is a recent re-addition, I guess you could say, to my deck. So I did cut Ripjaw Raptor about a couple months ago in the middle of the last RCQ season. So Ripjaw Raptor itself is a fantastic card, and it goes really, really well with Marauding Raptor. But I did cut it just because, simply put, it just wasn't that good in the metagame at the time. A 4/5, you know, sure, it can draw a card, but it really wasn't enough. It didn't have haste. It just didn't pair well against, like, Vein Ripper, for instance. It just wasn't that great. But with how the metagame is looking right now, Ripjaw Raptor is absolutely fantastic. With aggro decks coming back into the metagame, I think Ripjaw Raptor is going to be fantastic. I'm playing 3 copies of it currently. I think it's just going to be really good. Ripjaw Raptor, absolutely fantastic. I'm really happy to see it come back into the list. I think it's going to be a fantastic new addition. We're also playing Screaming Nemesis. So Screaming Nemesis is the new card from Duskmourn that I think is going to be really, really good in this deck. And there's really one reason for it, and that's because of Marauding Raptor. So it's a 3/3 for 3 with haste. When it's dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any other target. If a player is dealt damage this way, they can't gain life for the rest of the game, which is just awesome. The main reason, again, is Marauding Raptor. It comes in for only 2 mana because of the cost reduction. And then it gets dealt 2 damage, which then we get to deal 2 damage to any target. So we can deal it to a pesky blocker. We can deal it to our opponent and they don't gain life anymore. We can do it to a planeswalker. We can even do it to our own Ripjaw Raptor and draw another card if we want to. It's really good. I love Screaming Nemesis in this deck. And then, since we're also playing Screaming Nemesis and Ripjaw Raptors back in the list, we are back to playing Reckless Rage. I've played so many different copies of this. I was playing 4, then 2, then 3, then none. We were playing 4 full copies of Reckless Rage, and again, that's because of Screaming Nemesis being printed and with Ripjaw Raptor being back in the deck. Reckless Rage is fantastic. It kills so many good creatures. It kills, just in naming a couple of at least 4 power creatures, it takes out Adelines, it takes out Crackling Drakes, for instance, it takes out Thing in the Ice, it takes out a Ledger Shredder that only has 1 counter on it. It's just really, really good at taking out those big pesky creatures. And you want to know what? No one expects 1 mana, their creature to die, and it's so funny with their Crackling Drake. They're like, oh yeah, I'll pump it up, okay, you're dead. Then it's, oh, Reckless Rage, and I'll draw a card from my Ripjaw Raptor. It's so, so good. Definitely a huge fan of Reckless Rage in this deck. So these are the new cards that we put in the deck. What cards did we actually cut to be able to fit all these cards in? So these are the cards that were cut. So Bone Crusher Giant. Bone Crusher Giant is not a bad card by any stretch of the imagination. I just don't think it's really that great right now in the metagame. There's some things it does kill, sure, but I just don't think it's really that good right now. It's going to come back in the list, I'm sure, but I currently am not playing Bone Crusher Giants anymore. I also did cut the 1 copy of Itzquinth. I do think Itzquinth is good once again, but I just don't think it's really that great in the metagame. The main reason I was playing it was just because there was the whole metagame was different as it is now. There's different creatures that need to die, and I just don't think Itzquinth is really needed right now, but once again, I do expect it to come back into the deck at some point. Shifting Ceratops. Shifting Ceratops essentially was cut for one reason and one reason only. Vein Ripper doesn't exist anymore. I don't need to be able to block a Vein Ripper. I don't need to have 5 power to punch through a Vein Ripper. That's pretty much the reason why Shifting Ceratops is out and Ripjaw Raptor is in. And it's also nice because with Reckless Rage and the Screaming Nemesis, having more of an Enrage package in, it's just not needed with Shifting Ceratops. That's simply put. Again, none of these cards are bad cards. It's just not what I'm currently playing in the local metagame. So if you want to play this in your list, there's definitely, no reason not to for the most part, at least if you like playing the card. They're still really, really strong, and I do expect any number of these to come back at some point. So the next thing we got to talk about is the sideboard. What does the sideboard look like? And the sideboard is relatively similar, but there's a couple cards that I did cut just because the metagame has changed overall. So the card that hasn't changed, Tormod's Crypt. It's always been in the deck. It's 0 mana. It's a way to interact with our opponent's graveyards. And especially with Greasefang coming back, it's really important to have Tormod's Crypt. Damping Sphere is back in the list once again. Lotus Combo in Mono Green is popping back up. We definitely are going to need some copies of Damping Sphere. Cindervines is also back in the list. Cindervines is just good against a number of different decks. A lot of decks were kind of held back with, with how good Amalia combo was in Vampires. And now that those decks are back, Cindervines is definitely a lot better as a sideboard card. So that's why I'm playing a couple copies of those. We were also playing Magebane Lizard in Rending Valley. Magebane, I'm playing 3 copies of it in the sideboard. Sure, it's not a dinosaur, but it's really, really good. And it's only 1 mana when we have Marauding Raptor, and it survives the trigger, which is fantastic. So still playing Magebane Lizard. Rending Valley is back in the sideboard just because a whole bunch of aggro decks are back. Like Mono White Humans is getting popular again. Spirits is getting popular again. Greasefang is getting popular again. That's why we're playing the Rending Valleys once again. And then rounding out our sideboard, we're also playing Gruul Charm once again. Gruul Charm is back, and there's really only one reason Gruul Charm is back. And that's because Mono Green is back. This is my toolbox card that I use to actually beat Mono Green. We just go ahead and we choose the mode that says creatures without flying can't block this turn. And then we have all of our big dinosaurs with Register Alpha and Marauding Raptor. And then boom, they can't block and we kill them. That's why we're playing Gruul Charm. It is also pretty good against spirits, but that's not really the reason we play it. But, you know, it's definitely nice if our opponent's playing spirits, we just have this ultra awesome sideboard card for them, which is fantastic. And then we're also playing Witchstalker Frenzy once again, just because Shieldrids are back in. No more, no more Vein Rippers, Shieldrids are back in, and we want some Shieldrid removal. It's also good against a number of other decks. Once again, aggro decks have come back into the format, so it is nice having, like, being able to do 1 damage, or, 5 damage for only 1 mana is really, really good. So that's why we're playing Witchstalker Frenzy once again. The main cards that I ended up cutting are Pick Your Poison, just because Pick Your Poison is really, really good. Don't get me wrong, but, the main reason we were playing it was to take out Vein Ripper, and now that Vein Ripper it's still legal, but Sorin is banned, so it's kind of, in a way, it's not at the front of the metagame anymore. It's not as necessary. I did also cut Rampaging Ferocidon. Rampaging Ferocidon is not a bad card by any stretch. The reason we cut it is because we're playing Screaming Nemesis. We already have some main board, anti-life gain. So we really don't need Rampaging Ferocidon. I know that it is a different card, creatures come into play and it does some different stuff. I would 100% understand that. But, I felt with having Screaming Nemesis, we didn't need Rampaging Ferocidon in the sideboard. So that's what the entire main board and sideboard looks like right now. And the last thing I want to talk about is the wrap-up. Just overall, just my general thoughts on the deck and the metagame and everything. So, I'll be honest with you, these bans were absolutely fantastic. Rakdos has always been a kind of a tough matchup for dinosaurs. Although, in the past with Graveyard Trespasser, like the old Rakdos midrange list, it wasn't a good matchup, but it was definitely still beatable. If we had a lot of pressure on board, we're able to win that matchup. But with just having like a show and tell, I win button with a 6/5 flyer, I mean, like, that's just absolutely crazy. Funny enough, actually, during the whole, Vein Ripper, Rakdos vampires shenanigans, I actually did have a winning record against vampires as a whole in terms of including arena as well as RCQ finishes and stuff like that. I had a winning record against the deck, which was kind of hilarious, but it still was not a good matchup by any stretch of the imagination. And then with Amalia being gone, we don't have to hold up removal immediately, otherwise we're just going to die. The nice thing is, too, with Amalia combo was not only did it have this technically infinite combo, but it also had a bunch of life gain, which is not good for our deck when we're playing aggro. So that being said, the bans were absolutely fantastic on that front. The other front is a whole bunch of aggro decks are starting to come to the front of the metagame. Naturally, Dinosaurs is really good against aggro decks because most of the time, all of our creatures are bigger than theirs, so their attacks really aren't that good. Plus, we have, Ripjaw Raptor. It's really awkward to attack or block it because then we get to draw cards, and we've got Reckless Rage, which is just really efficient removal. We've got Galta, which is just so big, so they can't block it that well. Like, overall, we do really well against other aggro decks. So, since aggro decks are kind of coming back a little bit, that also helps Dinosaurs. So I do think the deck is in a pretty solid state as a whole. The last thing I want to mention is, I know I've talked about this in the past, of having like a more competitive oriented list and a more casual oriented list. So this is my stock list. If I was going to a competitive event, this is the exact list that I'd be playing. Obviously once Duskmore comes out and we do get Screaming Nemesis, but it's kind of like a mixture of both, but this is my actual list right now. I know I've talked about like how the list would look different at FNM and at a competitive event, but this is the list. This is my current list that I'm playing as of right now, and I'm really excited to play it. Like, I just love Ripjaw Raptor. I was really sad when I had to take it out of my deck, but now that it's back, I'm extremely excited about the possibilities moving forward. So that takes us to the end of the video here. Thanks so much for watching. The deck list is in the description below if you'd like to check it out for yourself. Huge shout out to our channel members, Ralph, Matt, Arcadius, Ray, Gary, and Sarwanoki. If you're interested in being a channel member, it's only $1 a month. You get access to the exclusive Discord as well as other features here on the channel. And the last thing too, if you'd like to check out some paper videos of me personally playing Dinosaurs in Pioneer, there's a whole bunch of them on the channel here. You can head to the Paper Magic tab. Should be right there. You can watch me play Dinosaurs in paper and definitely get some very spicy victories. So I'm Commander Crane. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope to catch you in the next one.